You're listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
Infinite diversity.
Live long and prosper, and welcome to Infinite Diversity, a Star Trek Universe podcast here on the BQN Podcast Collective. I'm your host for today, Chrissie, and joining me is my co-host, Thad. Thad, how are you today?
I miss my wife.
I'm sorry about that. I heard she just disappeared.
Yeah, some Starfleet captain deleted her. I'm not going to try to keep doing an Irish accent out of respect for people who actually have Irish accents.
Delete the wife.
And as you just heard there, joining us today is BQN's own Jeremiah Brown, host of the Captain's Couch, our Voyager podcast. Jeremiah, how are you today?
Chrissie, I am wonderful. I thank you and Thad so much for having me for this amazing Lower Decks episode.
There was no one else to have. I mean, really.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you could be on.
Who else could you get to talk about Voyager, right? With the same passion and zeal that I would bring.
There you go. That's the important part. Right. So then, before we jump into our topic for the day, we'd like to take a moment to thank our Patreon patrons who make this show possible, particularly our associate producer, Carl Wonders. Listeners, you can hear your name listed as one of our associate producers for a monthly subscription of just $10 at patreon.com/BQN. All right. We have two little bits of news. One's kind of news, but what'd you guys think of the Star Trek Day event?
So the streaming thing,
yeah,
it was very clear that they filmed that this past spring,
and
cut out every mention of Prodigy that had been previously recorded in it.
Mm-hmm.
I thankfully missed it. I have heard nothing but terrible things about it.
It wasn't terrible.
Yeah, terrible's maybe strong.
Well, again, I can't judge because I didn't watch it. I had to cram in work in a shorter period because I actually drove 4 hours each way to St. Louis to attend the Star Trek Day animation celebration.
Yes, and we want to hear all about that in a few.
Yeah, the stream, the thing I did enjoy was the segment where Tawny Newsome and Eugene Cordero were watching random clips of Star Trek and commenting on them. That was fun.
Yes, and we need more of that just in general.
And I liked
have them do a podcast with that.
The part that that was filmed at the Strange New World Season 2 premiere in New York, where they interviewed various Trek fans about what Star Trek meant to them and what their favorite Star Trek episodes were. That was good, too. I saw some familiar faces there, which was fun. Because I was at that event. I was not in that video, but I was at that event.
How dare they? Next year, maybe. Yeah, I mean, it was unimpressive. We'll say that, particularly in relation to the other years that they've done this. But I had a total brain fart about this, and I'm sitting here going, why is this so terrible? And I realized, of course, there's this strike. Yeah. That's why. So, I guess, yay that we got anything.
They recorded it.
That they thought about it ahead of time.
Yeah, my guess is that, they realized, this past spring, they realized a strike could happen, so okay, let's quick put this together while we can still get the actors to talk about Star Trek.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So, it'll be, something different.
Honestly,
next year,
though,
that's fine.
I will take a 22-minute stream over an hour-and-a-half stream that's, half a really bad DJ. So,
Oh, please. Yes. That was so much better than trying to have the guy from Chicago do anything. Not that they, I think, would do that again, but yeah. That's going to be a touch point for our generation of Trekkies, I think, that terrible host at Chicago.
I wasn't even thinking of that. I was thinking of the Star Trek Day event that they did in L.A. last year. The live event they invited a bunch of Trekkies to, and there was a DJ that was playing, weird, not even Star Trek music, just, weird, his own, I don't even know what it was, but he was doing music in between and like making awkward conversation throughout the whole thing, and it was weird and annoying, and I didn't need it.
Yeah,
it was weirder than Neelix's cheese.
I didn't get to watch that live, so I fast forwarded between the sections, and apparently that was a good thing. So,
but yes, no, the host, it was also better than the MC at Mission Chicago. That is very true.
Oh, Mission Chicago.
All right, well, so that was Star Trek Day. I did love that there were some fans that went and picketed with the Star Trek actors and writers. They invited a few, so that's really awesome. I think that's more of a Star Trek Day thing than anything they could have filmed and put up. So yeah, solidarity as always.
That would have been amazing to join them out there at the picket line. I know when the last time I was out in LA, we would we drove by all the major studios and honked and gave our support to everybody that were on the lines those days while I was out there. So I didn't get to do it. Didn't get to join the lines with them at any time, but it was good to show strength and solidarity with each and every one of them.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had to work, so I was not able to go. Otherwise, if I had been able to take off time off work, I probably would have gone to the event, because they did one in New York and they did one in LA at the same time. Yeah. Anyway, so some fans did have the very lucky experience of getting to go to the Star Trek Day theatrical event in various theaters around the country. I wasn't able to go, unfortunately, but Jeremiah here managed to make the trek. So how was that?
It was a lot of fun. I was taken a little aback when I first got there, as I couldn't find the theater, and only to realize I had passed it 3 times. It was a very small, one-screen kind of art house theater.
Okay.
Beautiful venue. It just was not what I was expecting from a studio-backed event. But it was a lot of fun. They had swag bags that had some Cerritos and Lower Decks pennants, stickers. A Cerritos luggage tag was in it.
Nice.
I've added to my Star Trek popcorn buckets, which I didn't think was ever going to be something that I would be collecting used popcorn buckets. But now I have one from the premiere and the finale of Picard from each one of those showings this year, and now the animated Celebration popcorn bucket. There was a really cool Lower Decks photo op display that had standees of Mariner and Boimler in front of a turbo lift door from the Cerritos Bridge. And it was a lot of fun. Unfortunately, the only negative thing I can say about the event is that there were no other Trekkies that I have known. And it surprised me, because it seems like any event that I go to throughout the country, there's always somebody from our circle there, and suddenly I was at a Star Trek event completely alone.
Wow.
But at the same time, it was also refreshing because I didn't have, hundreds of people knowing who I was, and I have no idea who they were. So it was a little nice to have that anonymity again.
Man, I haven't experienced definitely having no one recognize me at a Star Trek event in years.
Right? So, it was very kind of nice to just blend into the background and just be present in the moment for what I was there for.
Right.
And not needing to give my attention to tons of people, which I love to do. Sure. But you know how it is at STLV, you're trying to take a restroom break and it takes you 2 hours to get to the restroom because you're stopped every 5 feet from somebody going, "Oh my god, I know who you are!" And it's like, well, I have to make conversation with you now, so I will hold it.
Yeah. The best are all the people that walk up and greet you by name and have a great conversation with you, and then they leave and you're like, I have no idea who that was.
Right, I have no idea who that was. So the screening, I almost was in tears when it first started, because I was, of course, expecting the first episode of the season, and that's not what we got.
Right.
And I thought that I had driven 4 hours to not accomplish my goal, and that they were only going to show us these random Lower Decks episodes that I've already seen. And I'm like, I took off work early and drove 4 hours to see something that I've seen 100 times. I was pleasantly surprised when we launched into season 4, and it made the journey worthwhile. You mentioned earlier that the streaming presentation for Star Trek Day had deleted all references of Prodigy.
Mm-hmm.
This event did not. And I found it extremely interesting that they showed clips of Prodigy and referenced Prodigy several times between episodes. The one thing that was a very glaring fact of Prodigy's cancellation was on the screen, one of the slides they showed was the animation celebration art that had Murph present in the artwork. The popcorn buckets, however, was the same art with Murph deleted from them.
Right.
That seemed kind of jarring.
I have to imagine that part of this is a licensing thing because they are trying to sell it to a different studio to produce show. So Paramount can't show it because they're trying to sell the rights to someone else.
Right. Which hopefully we are. Every day with no news, I'm like, no news is good news because that means we're one day closer to finding a new home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And maybe if it's in the hands of some other property, they'll merchandise it correctly.
Right? My God, the new Trek merchandising for the toy line has just been pathetic. I was so excited, and the figures themselves are not good quality. This figure for Zero will break in a child's... It almost broke in my hand taking him out of the box, let alone being actually played with by a child. I mean, his arms are just going to snap off.
Right. But speaking of figures, we do have released for Star Trek Day, well, the pre-order put up for Star Trek Day, X06 made Lower Decks statue figures.
Yes, I saw those.
Oh, those are out? I missed
They're
those.
not. Oh, the pre-order's out. They're coming next month.
The pre-order's out.
Next year.
Nice.
But you have to pre-order. If you want one, you should pre-order.
I will do that when we are done today.
They're $55, which is a breath of fresh air from X06.
Yeah. Yeah, no, X06 just took me to the cleaners for Tom Paris and Quark. Immediately, we're ready to ship after STLV, and I'm like, this is the worst time of year to finally deliver these figures. Because, Quark has been over a year since his pre-order.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, I was hoping. I'm like, please just let me get through Thanksgiving, and then you can ship me Quark. Like, I'm fine with that. But it's like, no, right after STLV, ooh, Tom Paris is ready to ship. And then last week, boom, Quark is ready to ship. I'm like, damn you, X06.
So I have the Janeway and the Cisco, and I've tried to be more discerning just because they're so expensive. I can't buy them all. When they release Miles O'Brien, I'll probably have to get that. But
the only reason I bought Quark is because he's Quark.
Sure.
And of course, anybody that knows me knows my thing for Ferengi. So I had to have him. But other than that, I refuse to buy any of the other X06 statues until I have the full Voyager crew. And as of now, I have the entire line that has been released. And I'm just waiting for Neelix and B'Elanna to be up for pre-order.
Well, they haven't done a cast, have they?
No, I don't know if they're going... They don't... Last time, when I talked to them at STLV, they still were not sure whether or not they were even going to do Kess.
Oh, that could be... Getting the likeness agreement could be difficult for that, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they do Kess, I'll absolutely buy her. If they don't do Kess, I don't feel that my Voyager crew would be incomplete by any means.
They should do a Naomi Wildman.
They should do.
They should.
Wildman. I'm personally hoping, for a Proton line.
That'd be
Proton.
great.
Oh,
do Proton. Kincaid,
I mean, they're gonna do 20 different Spocks, so they could absolutely do a Tom as Captain Proton.
Yes.
Right, and Arachnia. Yes. And I also, what I really want is I want variant Janeway heads with all of her different hairstyles.
That Janeway figure though is so good. I freaking love
she's the best. Chakotay, unfortunately, looks the most unlifelike out of all of them. When I'm looking at them on the shelf, it's just his paint job, his face just looks... He looks fake, as the rest of them all look lifelike.
I'm not a huge fan of their sculpt for the EMH. It looks like a real person, it just doesn't look like Bob Picardo.
And see, I haven't noticed anything wrong with the EMH. Maybe I don't know, maybe I shouldn't take a better look at it.
I mean, I don't own it. I've just seen pictures. The only ones I own are Sisko and Janeway, which are both fantastic.
Yeah, I do not have any. So,
but I did. As for the new Lower Decks ones, because they're not as, because they're animated characters, they're not as incredibly detailed as the other ones that they've doing. They're smaller statues. Right. They were actually on display at STOV.
They were,
and they're 55, and I may end up ordering the Mariner as well, but I've definitely already ordered the Boimler. I love that he comes with both a sort of half smile and the Boimler screaming face. Like, you can swap out his head.
Nice. Oh, cool. All right. Yeah, so take all our money and come up with better merch. Also,
and more make timely better
merch,
animated
which we'll talk
shorts.
about next. Yes, good segue. That was a thing. First of all,
certainly a thing.
To skin a cat, I thought was going to be about T'Ana. Really,
I did too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what'd you guys think?
I was laughing hysterical, especially with the knickers in a twist. But where they lost me was with the butthead and the screw. Yeah. That's where it took me out of it, and I'm like, okay, this is pedantic at this point.
I laughed at the when Kirk says to the butthead and the screw, "Did you just move your station onto the bridge?" I laughed at that.
I mean, that was funny.
Part.
Yeah, that was the best.
I saw someone describe this, saying that it was, the sound and the animation was a perfect homage to TAS, and then they ruined it by making it boomer humor. And I think that's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
I love that we got the TAS Enterprise flyby on the Delta, and it had like the warble of an old VHS tape. I liked that a lot. I do not like that there is now, thankfully non-canon, official Star Trek making the joke, well, everybody gets too offended at stuff. I do not like that at all.
No. Yeah, that was a little like, oh, like, do y'all just realize what you put out there? Okay.
Yeah.
One thing that was jarring for me was the fact that the animated Spock still looked exactly like Nimoy's animated Spock, and it obviously didn't have Nimoy's voice. So when Ethan Peck's voice came out of it, I was like, whoa, that's not right. But the Kirk, he did not look like William Shatner's Kirk.
That bugs me.
So I only watched it once because that's all I could stomach, but
same.
I saw some people talking about how that wasn't supposed to be Kirk. It was supposed to be like a replacement for Kirk who didn't know what he was doing. Because he didn't quite look Kirk-like.
I assumed it was supposed to look like
that.
Paul Wesley.
That's what I assumed, too.
Okay, but it wasn't his voice.
No, but that doesn't mean it was.
So, right, yeah, well, yeah.
Anyway, no, it was not Paul Wesley's voice, but I think it was still supposed to be Paul Wesley's Kirk, but the fact that, it was, Spock was still the same Spock from TAS, but Kirk was different, was weird. And I wonder if that was probably has to do with trying to get, with the issue of getting the rights to Shatner's likeness. I'm sure he would have sold it to them, but they probably didn't want to pay for it.
Which is exactly the stuff that they're striking about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But when I looked up, because I thought it was Ethan Peck's voice, and I wanted to make sure. And I looked it up on IMDb, and okay, when I looked it up before, I found it. Now it doesn't exist on IMDb. Oh, even if I put Anyway, the IMDb page only listed Bruce Horak as a voice, but it's gone now, so I don't know. But I'm hoping the rest of them are better.
I think that the one that Aaron had a hand in will be brilliant.
I'm sure.
Memory Alpha says that it was Ethan Peck as Spock, Pete Holmes as the Captain. They do not, in fact, say Kirk. Okay. And Christina Maliza as Maress, the Dream Woman, and Nickersonian. Bonnie Gordon was the computer. And Eric Bauza was the Antedian Assface and Screwhead.
Okay. I'll tell you what, the thought I was having through all of it was, this is a Mel Brooks, this is like something that got cut out of Spaceballs. You know, that's the feel it had, but not properly done.
It felt like an SNL sketch.
Because the screwhead...
sketch to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, I mean, that's... If you think about Spaceballs and, you know, like the joke of having your head put on backwards by the transporter, that's on the same level. You know, but just not... But this just wasn't as well done, so...
Yeah, they really needed Tuvok to tell them that they ain't found shit.
This is true. This is true. Right. So let's talk about Twovix. Not Twovix, but Twovix. Right.
I mean, there comes a time in every Star Trek podcast run where the hosts will need to debate Twovix. It just is...
Yes.
Very early in my podcasting career, I did... a podcast with a friend of mine called Delta Flyer, not to be confused with
yes. Robbie
and Garrett's Delta Flyers, which Garrett has apologized to me about because he didn't look to see if anyone else was using the name.
Oh, wow. Talk about an unnecessary but also immensely appreciated acknowledgement.
I know, right?
I love it.
A friend of mine, Stuart, and I were doing a rewatch of Voyager, and we talked about every episode. Unfortunately, we only ever made it through the end of season 2. Someday we hope to get back to it. But yes, we did a Twovix episode, and it's... You always have to talk about Twovix at some point. So here we are talking about Twovix again. And I think I'm in the minority here.
I think you are. I did a talking about other times talking Twovix. I do a Star Trek discussion group with the Ollie Osher Lifelong Learning Institute that is set up with one of the local universities. It's a nationwide thing. That's why it's not just for this university. But and I did one on heavy moral episodes, and maybe it was just because it's all people over the age of like 55, but they were all like, yeah, Janeway was right. And the amount of conversation that I thought was going to happen didn't. It was very interesting. Yeah. I think
it is very important to acknowledge when talking about Twovix that however you feel about it, and many people have very strong opinions about it, it is not a black and white issue, as evidenced by the fact that the fandom is still debating this 25 years later.
Yeah.
Well, even Janeway had issues wrestling with her decision. I mean, at the end of the episode, she is all but in tears as she nearly runs out of sickbay after what she did. She had a very difficult time wrestling with the decision. Yeah. And even Una McCormick addressed it in her novelization of Janeway's autobiography, where it was brought up that Janeway still later in life had deep, deep issues with her decision.
I think of all of the decisions she made over the course of that entire series, including the one that got them stuck there in the first place, I don't think any of them were as heavy as Twovix.
Agreed. I also agree with Janeway's decision.
As do I.
I don't.
Thad's wearing a Team Twovix t-shirt, so okay.
But I will say that I am not... that it is possible to disagree with Janeway's decision without believing that it makes Janeway a terrible person and a terrible captain and all that, because there are certainly there are plenty of people who feel as I do about Twovix, and there are plenty of people who also feel as I do about Janeway. Like, Janeway's my favorite captain. I love Janeway, but it certainly is the people who hate Janeway. And there are people on the internet who believe that Janeway is the worst thing that ever happened to Star Trek, will often bring up Twovix as an example of that. It was an impossible decision that unfortunately had to be made. I do not believe that it was the right decision because And I will say that Janeway herself, if you go back to season 1 in Phage, when the Vidians steal Neelix's lungs, when she's talking to the Vidians and saying that they need the lungs back, and they say they can't because they've already put them in this other Vidian, and taking it out would kill him, Janeway specifically says that she cannot that she cannot kill another to save someone else. So,
yeah,
Janeway
but also
that's
relative, isn't it? I mean,
it's relative
like
that when it's Tuvok, she cares more.
Yeah,
I mean, he was her best friend.
Yeah, but that's like, it's relative in life in general, because, you know, and this is the trolley problem, really, is what it comes down to with that. But I mean, people say, you know, I can't kill in order to save another life, but also, you know, present them with a situation like World War II.
If it was literally the trolley problem, I would agree that you should send the trolley to kill Twovix.
Yeah, it's not literally the trolley. I meant the larger
I'm
issue,
just saying, like, if it truly was that, if it was as black and white as the trolley problem, which I have never understood why there is any debate about the trolley problem. Obviously, you kill the fewer people. Like, that... What's the other option?
I don't know. But then again, I grew up with the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, so...
But the thing is... it's not the same thing in this situation, because Neelix and Tuvok had already died, effectively.
Functionally, yeah.
They had become Twovix. Twovix is now a new life form and has agency, and does not consent to this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I always looked at it as Janeway taking the needs of the many stance, and the crew benefited from Neelix and Tuvok individually more than they could have benefited from the existence of Twovix. And so her decision was one for what was going to benefit Voyager in the long run, and that was to have both individuals restored.
Janeway's own log says that Twovix does Neelix's job and Tuvok's job better than either of them did.
She does say that.
Yeah, but also you're having one person do two people's jobs, which eventually will not work.
Right. You can't have Twovix in the galley cooking dinner for 150 people when the ship goes to red alert, needs its tactical officer.
Right.
Right, but, like, they can assign someone else to the galley.
Well, they didn't come up with that idea till the end of Season 7, when Shell decided that he could serve as Neelix's substitute.
Red alert chili.
Red alert chili. Chicken warp core en bleu.
I think where it comes in with this episode, with the non-sentient ball of meat that it eventually becomes.
How do we know it's non-sentient? Just because it can't speak doesn't mean it's not sentient.
I think at that point it didn't matter.
Yeah, no. I'm just like...
even if it were...
When she says it's non-sentient, I'm like, you don't know that.
Well, I mean...
Okay, but...
I absolutely loved Talin's stance on do not engage the organism.
Yes, that was beautiful. She's just like, no, this is a problem, we're going to fix it. End of story. Which is very Vulcan, and actually something we should consider with Twovix that had not occurred to me until just now. The logical thing to do is to separate them. And I think Tuvok would have done that had he had the option over, if it had happened to somebody else. But that's me. I think the most important thing that is the difference here is what Shax says. We're not stuck in the Delta Quadrant.
Right.
And that's the end-all be-all of it. And that answers whether or not Janeway did the right thing, because she's constrained by her circumstances. Mm-hmm. And that's the only way to answer it. Speaking of not being stuck in the Delta Quadrant with this, I was kind of hoping that we would see the farm again.
Yes.
Because that's the logical place for this to end up. Mm-hmm. But of course, in a 30-minute episode, if they're going to wrap it up and not have it continue, then no time. But
or they could have even mentioned it as, a possibility, something a means to an end. Like, okay, if we can't figure this out, there's always the farm.
Yeah. And you'll be apparently very well taken care of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, hate mail, go to the website formerly known as Twitter, tell us we're all wrong. I didn't mean to cut off the Tuvix discussion if we were continuing.
Oh, no.
I was
There's
just offering
because
up
we could keep talking about that all episode long, and we would never get a consensus.
Yeah.
No, Tuvix
No.
is like a causality loop that never ends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
And
no,
that's
I
why
think
it's wonderful
I think
for a philosophical
this is perfect.
conversation.
We've explained our positions on Twovix, and now we will talk about the rest of the episode.
Yeah.
Yes, I did love, I have to say, specific to this, how they ended up with, like, the Neelix pattern on their clothes, even though there was no reason for
Yes,
it.
that was good.
That was a great
That
Easter
was
egg.
beautiful.
That was one of those Easter eggs that is so much fun without it being too much. It was so subtle. If you didn't know what you were seeing, it would just go over your head, and and it's fine. But for those that know what they saw, it was beautiful.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit already, but I liked that until they had looked up what happened to Twovix, they kept making comments like, "Oh, it's not his fault. He's now a sentient being. It's not like he." And they're like, "Yes, I'm here and I love living." It's like, just
Yes!
like, or I love being alive, I think. But yeah, it was like that was so amusing because obviously we as the viewer know what's about to happen.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I was really, really hoping, and I know it was a pipe dream, but I was really hoping for there to have been like a communication between Freeman and Janeway being the only solution is murder.
That would have been good.
Or Janeway being like, "I'm on my way," and having the character come over to the
I'll take care of
Janeway
it.
grab a phaser rifle. I'm on my way.
I'm on my way. Yes, I know. I can take care of this.
Oh, yeah. Right, yeah, so that's the Tuvix Tillips, all of the rest. That was a unique solution, though, to force the situation, which I liked. Shall we talk about the Voyager?
Heck yeah.
Always.
Well, they're on the Voyager. So Voyager gets turned into a museum. We knew that already, right? From Geordi.
And from Endgame.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was an alternate,
Well,
right? It was a museum.
but...
alternate, yeah. I'm being pedantic. Just go with it. The curator. What'd you think about him?
So I was told before I watched this episode that this episode was specifically made for me. that
Yes.
There was nobody else that was going to connect with this episode more than I would. And the curator is literally the embodiment of myself when it comes to the USS Voyager. Like, if I have ever related to a character on screen, I have never related more to this man. That this is the character that is about myself. And
I love it.
The fact that, this is perhaps Starfleet's greatest work of art, absolutely. I mean, I would be just as frantic and neurotic running around that ship of, "Don't touch that, don't touch this, what are you doing, my beautiful starship, how dare you?" I mean, that was just absolutely me. And the fact that I myself am a Voyager curator and am extremely protective of all things that have come from that show that are in my private collection. I completely am on the same page with him of, absolutely, you are too close to that display. You need to get back 3 feet.
Love it. Yeah. Right. So they went through all of this work to preserve it. Put in holographic emitters across the ship, which I think is what does he say? He says it's perfectly reasonable as long as it doesn't change the original or something. I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah, it was something along the lines of, it was a compromise that doesn't detract from the originality, but it adds to the experience.
And that's a standard thing you hear about that sort of thing.
Right. Well,
No, that is true. Yeah.
When I used to have a classic Mustang, and the only non-original alteration that I did to it was to add a modern sound system into it. But I was careful for the fact that no holes had to be cut or no existing holes had to be modified, that everything that was put into the car fit to the original space for that. So all it did was enhance it. It didn't change anything.
Where'd you find the leaded gasoline?
She never took leaded gasoline. She was, new enough it didn't take...
I'm teasing.
Speaking of restorations and reveals, I felt that even being an animated version, that Voyager had a better hero's entrance and reveal than the Enterprise D did in Picard Season 3.
Oh.
That may be my own bias.
Okay.
But just the way that she was presented, the way that the ship illuminated, powered up, and the shots from a directorial standpoint, it was everything for me. It was everything I wanted, and more. And the fact that I was fortunate enough to attend the Star Trek Day screening and finally got to see Voyager on a theatrical screen was a dream come true.
I think it didn't quite reach that level for me, and I think part of that is because we've seen Voyager since then. I mean, though we did see the Enterprise D at the beginning of Picard as well, but that's... Yeah, no, I don't know. It didn't quite have the same emotional feel to me. It still was very great, but it wasn't... Also, probably because it was in the trailer. It was like... Yeah. I think that took some of it away from me. Because it wasn't like... We all knew the Enterprise D was coming in Picard, but...
Yeah. But I don't have the emotional attachment to Voyager the way I do for Enterprise D. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Voyager, but, Enterprise D is my... I grew up on Enterprise D.
Right,
so,
and I'm exactly flipped. Enterprise D coming back, it was, yes, a scream moment, and this is amazing. Voyager's big reveal in this episode was right in the feels for me. It got me all the way down to my Katra.
I will say, honestly, of, ship reveals in Star Trek, the one, and this kind of surprises me a little, but the one that really just, really blew me away, I had literal chills, was the end of Discovery Season 1 when the original Enterprise
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Well, of course. It's, the original, the first. I mean, yes, I know that the NX-01 is technically first, but let's face it, the Connie is the first.
Also, if the NX-01 ever shows up, that will also... I mean, we did see it in the museum, but that would also be amazing.
And I thought that she was going to show up in Strange New Worlds. I mean, they built up the entire episode for them to go to the NX-01.
That would have been so cool.
Happen. I'm like, damn you! But again, I guess at the same time, people would also roll their eyes and go, and really, is every new Star Trek going to have a reveal of a classic ship?
They could have done it. That episode was only 45 minutes long. They could have done it.
They could have done it. And I wish that they would have done it.
Yeah. But that's, and then you could have had the same type of reaction because the scene in Engineering where they were talking about oh, this is great, but it just would have been, instead of looking at a weird tube from the floor, it would have been the ship itself.
But you know what? It wouldn't have been the same because we already know from Picard that the NX-01 had a refit.
Right, which would have been even cooler because we would have
been cooler, but at the same time, it wouldn't have quite had the same impact on us because it would not have been the ship we had seen on Enterprise.
That's true.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a beautiful opening. I loved how excited Mariner was, and she's like, "Oh, Boimler's going to be excited."
Yeah. I was completely... The minute I saw that trailer, I was like, "Oh my god!" I'm screaming just like Mariner. We get to do something on Voyager.
Honestly, the thing that excited me most when I saw the trailer was that we saw the macrovirus. And I still loved that in this episode. Macrocosm is one of my favorite episodes of Voyager.
I love that there's an actual designation for the macrovirus, just besides macrovirus.
The Tactacian
virus. I'm like, that's great, because even macrovirus didn't ever establish that virus came from the Tac-Tac. It was just the Tac-Tac wanted it eradicated at any cost.
And I have to imagine that Tactacian virus also, the official name for Tactacian virus also involves some sort of body gesture, like the Tac-Tac language.
Oh, yeah.
But definitely not hands on the hips. Because
not hands on the hips.
That is a grievous offense in the Tactacian culture.
So they do all of this fixing up, but miss this macrovirus behind the wall.
Yeah, how did the macrovirus manage to stay hidden not only for the rest of Voyager's trip through the Delta Quadrant, all of the damage that Voyager took over the years, and nobody ever had to access that bioneural interface to find the virus hiding on the bridge this whole time.
And how did the virus never infect that gel pack? I mean,
it just was somehow dormant. Unless, that it was the one that bit Janeway on the bridge and was just put into a deep coma. Janeway infected it backwards.
What is that, the joke about the snake that bit somebody and they died?
Yeah.
Yeah. We get a mention of the events of those old scientists, which we had seen in the trailer, but still was awesome. Yeah, and the macrovirus, and Boimler is incredibly distracted because he's told he's going to get a promotion. And then he's supposed to go stop the macrovirus by standing in the doorway but not closing it. That really bothered me.
Well, the thing, there's not even a door there.
I guess, okay.
That's the corridor. That corridor goes from Harry Kim's state, between the MSD and Harry Kim, his station, and that corridor actually leads to an emergency airlock, the bridge escape pod, the head, and then it wraps around behind the bridge module to Janeway's ready room.
All right, that answers the question then. That's all information I did not have. I thought it was I thought it was the turbo lift on the other side.
No, that is just a corridor.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
I couldn't have given you quite as detailed a description of it as Jeremiah just did, but
I could walk the corridors of Voyager blindfolded.
Oh. Yes, and I could do that with the Enterprise D, so I got you. Ransom speaks to Marion. That's fun. That was a nice little moment.
That was a nice little moment. That a friend of mine it's funny that it's relevant to this episode. We were making up to Marion a while back in text messages, and I don't remember what it was that prompted him, but his response was Twovix, his blossom wilted.
That's good. Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
And that is supposed to refer to murder, or...
Yeah, because, Twovix was created with the orchid blossom. So, the wilted blossom would, Twovix's murder.
Okay. Well, it could just mean death, too, so I was being
true.
very clear.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I took it as murder because I always think of it as...
blossom wilted.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then all hell breaks loose. Random safety protocols.
As does Voyager tend to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was Voyager. Shit got freaky.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, that was beautiful. The ship was broken by cheese.
The holograms were particularly amazing.
Yes.
But before we talk about them, I want to talk about my most favorite of all Easter eggs in this episode.
Yes.
The threshold salamanders.
Yes. Oh my god. And they're mechanical instead of being holographic or something.
Yes. I have a special affinity for Threshold. I will die on the hill that it is a brilliant episode.
It is.
And I can make the joke that Tom Paris gave me salamanders because back in the day, Robbie borrowed the master copy of Threshold from the Paramount archive and never returned it. And 20-some years later, gifted it to me. In fact, I have a t-shirt I had made that says, I love salamanders, and it has 2 salamanders on it that I specifically had made just to wear when I saw Robbie.
Amazing.
Oh my god, I love it.
The fact that they had a salamander sit in Janeway's chair in the Janeway pose was just, it was one of the moments that nobody else was laughing at in the screening. And I'm like, do y'all not realize how brilliant this is? It's the fact that Janeway herself became a salamander. This is obviously the Janeway salamander. The fact that the salamander made its way to the bridge, took the chair, raised the center console, and is sitting in a classic Janeway pose. Like, it was probably my favorite moment of the episode that wasn't seeing Voyager itself.
Yeah. Yes, the idea that the macro Borg and then, or the macro nanite, and then that happening because of it, that was just beautiful.
It was beautiful. The holograms were what better... There couldn't have been better holograms chosen for this episode other than the 3 that they did. And I even liked the fact that, I don't remember who mentioned it, because it was a real quick line that almost got cut off because of the macrovirus attacking. But the clown was never even a Voyager holodeck program.
Yeah, and Mariner calls that out, and yes, the first time I watched it, I'm like, wait a second, the clown should... Oh, okay.
I'll be on there.
Yeah. But it makes sense, the fact that there would be record of it in Voyager's logs, and the fact that it would be significant to Voyager's journey. Okay, I can see why there would be a display of this.
Yeah, I took... Because that was my first thought, too. I'm like, that wasn't on Voyager, but then I figured the curator had put it in somewhere.
Yeah. The Michael Sullivan, I couldn't stop with the Michael Sullivan. I was really, really wanting him to call Mariner Katie O'Clair. When he grabbed her and kissed her, oh, Katie,
yes.
But it was still brilliant. And when he's in Astrometrics, wiping the console down like it's a bar and sighs and says, I miss my wife. I thought I was going to die laughing.
That was so good.
Yes.
And then
I love
Boimler's...
you, but I can't be with you.
Yes. And Boimler's brilliant solution to distract Chaotica by saying that he was the son of Proton.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my god, that is absolutely brilliant. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Voyager relaunch novels, but Tom and B'Elanna ended up having a second child who was a son. And I'm like, oh my god, I can totally see Tom creating additions to the program and have son of Proton.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
I mean, I would expect Miral to be written into the program as well, but I totally see a Tom Jr. running around dressed as Captain Proton on the holodeck.
Yeah, I love that. Let's talk about Boimler. Boimler's ready to turn down a promotion because of how he feels about how it might affect his relationships on the Cerritos. That's quite a thing.
Yeah.
That is.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's because it does make sense, though, given how Mariner reacted the last time.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the last time, if he had just been promoted and not left...
Yes. And
she wouldn't have had issue with it. Yeah. Yeah.
It was the fact that I think that he not only left, he didn't tell her, and it was to leave for Riker, who she had a personal connection to.
Yeah. Yeah. But it also made me think of how many times Riker turned down a promotion because he was happy where he was.
It's true. And Riker could have been a captain.
There's a nice little connection.
Decades before he took command of the Titan.
So yeah.
Which this being a Voyager theme-centric episode, I had to laugh at the fact that Boimler was wanting to turn down a promotion. Mariner tried to turn down a promotion in the end. And this whole time I'm thinking about Poor Kim would be spinning about these people that are just willing to turn down a promotion.
I was hoping that Rutherford would make a joke about Harry Kim when he stayed an ensign at the end.
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been good.
That would have been good.
What about Harry Kim? He's the longest serving ensign with the most authority.
Well, it's funny, too, the fact that Harry Kim, they showed, our characters in Lower Decks, they share bunks in a hallway, essentially, because they're, lower-ranked ensigns. But they've all Mariner and Boimler are both bridge officers. We've seen them on the bridge taking stations multiple times.
Yeah.
Harry was a junior officer, even though he was part of the senior staff. He was still a junior ranked crew member. Then he had his own private quarters. And at the same time, we saw that Voyager also had lower deck style quarters with bunks. So it's interesting that some ensigns have private quarters and some do not, I found.
I think we can chalk that up to them, Voyager not being at full capacity.
Oh, that's
There's
good.
extra rooms, you know. But I hadn't thought of that before. Let's talk about those promotions. That was a cute little promotion ceremony.
It was. We've never seen anything like that, where there's, they're giving out multiple promotions at the same time.
Yeah.
I think that we saw on Voyager that there was a dinner of the senior staff when Tuvok was promoted.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a ceremony when Sisko became captain in Deep Space Nine.
And there's the holodeck thing when
Worf
got promoted in Generations.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good one. Other than that, we've never seen a lot of pomp and circumstance.
Tom Paris just had a box on his chair.
It's probably up to the commanding officer how they're going to commemorate it, I guess would be the word. Or not. Which makes sense.
It makes me wonder now, does everybody have little boxes that they keep their pips in when they take their uniforms off? I always just thought that, they would replicate a new uniform and it would already have the pips on it.
So, if you'll notice, the beginning of this episode, when their Mariner is getting dressed and you see her putting her pip on the collar. She did put
her pip on, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And there's a disconnect there because we see them replicating uniforms in Discovery. So it's a little bit before they went into the future. I mean, so yeah, that's always a little disconnect, but
they replicated the uniform, but the uniform we see replicated did not have a badge on it because it was when why did I say Boimler?
Burnham, because it's the same with B.
Burnham does not have a rank at the time, so I wonder, do they not? They probably don't replicate the badges. They probably just move the badge from uniform to uniform, because we see in Discovery they use those badges kind of as dog tags.
Mm-hmm.
It's true.
And later when there's communications equipment in it, that would just make it more energy intensive. Yeah. So, all right, I'll give you that one. Makes sense. Little pit boxes. So we have T'Lyn getting a provisional promotion, I guess.
I love the fact that they used the Voyager provisional rank.
Yes.
I like that has been now established in further continuity, that part of the Starfleet uniform.
We saw it in Prodigy as well.
We did.
Although I still don't fully understand that, because it was that guy that was wearing both regular rank and provisional rank on his collar. But
I think he just did what he wanted to do. He's like, I'm going to wear both.
Yeah.
Which I think would have been a funny thing for Janeway to have removed them one set of ranks when she encountered him. Be like, you're not following the uniform code, and she rips the pips off.
A la Rolaren having to take off her earring.
So, I watched this episode with a friend who, and I'm sorry to even put this in the universe, doesn't like Voyager.
Delete the friend.
Yeah, I know, right? But she, so I had to explain the provisional thing to her because she didn't know what that was. But yeah,
that's all right.
But yeah, I think, yes, it's a very nice little callback, and it makes sense because T'Lyn is not an actual commissioned officer in Starfleet. Although I still have mixed feelings about the use of the provisional pins on Voyager, because I feel that if you're going to say that they're integrated in the crew as equals, they shouldn't have a visual signifier that they are different.
And then they have that, yeah. They did not explore that nearly as much as they needed to, but that's okay.
Anyway.
Right, and so then Mariner tries to get rid of the promotion. Did either of you think that this felt like Ransom was making it about himself, like he was going to be the one to fix her?
Mm-hmm. Kinda, yeah. That definitely felt like a I can fix you situation.
But of course, Ransom is, kind of a narcissist too.
Yeah.
Not even kind of, yeah. But I think we get a little better idea of that from the next episode. So
he also does have Mariner's best interest at heart, I think.
He does. We really don't get that until the next episode.
Yeah, it's hard for me to separate them because I watched them together, so I don't think. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I like Ransom. And I know that this is not the nature of Lower Decks. I keep wanting to really see some character development in him where he evolves past this gym obsessed meathead, and we really get some more depth to him.
So, at the end of that exchange with him and Mariner, he starts working out in his uniform. Who does that?
Lieutenant William Baxter from Voyager's first seasons.
There you go.
Yeah.
Who has one of the most bizarre lines of dialogue in all of Star Trek, where he's talking about how the environmental controls are off and it was getting cold. And at first I thought it was because I was working out so much. I'm like, what does that even mean?
Yup. I don't even begin to know. All right, well, to go from that fun to something that is less fun, the ICAS Chekta, I'm not pronouncing that correctly, gets destroyed by a mysterious ship that kind of looks like Slave One, but doesn't.
This is sad because this is, for people who may not have realized, this is the ship from Wedge Douche.
Right. Yeah. Right. It's the same two characters that we saw. Were two of the ones from Wedge Douche. So, yeah. So what do we think is going on there?
I think... I don't know the details, obviously, but my theory is that it's Section 31 Boimler.
Okay.
Interesting. That would make sense considering that they left that on the cliffhanger the last time they mentioned that.
And I think the ship kind of looks like it has that fancy armor from the future that Janeway brought back in Endgame.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it would be nice to see that ablative armor return and get some facts about where that was utilized after they came home. I think it's obvious that this ship is the big bad of season 4 of Lower.
Oh yeah.
So this is going to be the overarching story. First, it made me think of, it immediately invoked thoughts of that Rasmutin from Next Gen.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Rasmussen, okay.
Yes, sorry. And the ship from Enterprise that they discovered that was bigger on the inside. That was part of the Cold
that was
War.
Supposed to be a Doctor Who crossover that didn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah, so those were the first two thoughts I had.
No.
Yeah, that was originally going to be a Doctor
awesome.
Who crossover, but negotiations with UPN and BBC didn't come anywhere.
Yeah, cool. Didn't know that. Yeah, I'm not sure who it is yet. My first instinct is Agamus and Peanut Hamper. So we'll see.
Oh, Peanut Hamper. My opinions on Peanut Hamper are more diversive than my opinions on Twovix.
I love Peanut Hamper.
I do not like Peanut Hamper.
I do not like Peanut Hamper either. I think Peanut Hamper is the worst character ever created for Star Trek.
Man, I'm just so outnumbered in this episode.
Wow, I don't think I go that. I don't. The first time she was on, I thought that was really funny. I did not enjoy seeing her romance the bird people.
Well, if you listened to the season 1 finale of The Captain's Couch, Mark and I go into great detail of my dislike of bird people in Star Trek.
Oh dear. Okay.
Okay.
Don't tell Mignone.
So I freaking love when Star Trek does weird things and like goes way outside of like the normal sphere. So like for me, I mean, I wouldn't want to watch a whole series of Peanut Hamper and the Bird People, but I loved that I got to watch an episode of it.
Yeah, I think what I like Peanut Hamper for is how everybody else is reacting. Mm-hmm. You know, it's what she brings out in everybody else, which I think is more of a thing.
I like the fact that it's a throwback to Next Gen and a continuation of that storyline of the exocomps developing sentience. Mm-hmm. I don't think that Peanut Hamper is a bad idea on paper. For me, it's the name that sticks in my craw and just infuriates me. Of all of the names that you can come up with, they came up with Peanut Hamper. And that's where it loses me entirely, and I'm like, I just write Peanut Hamper off as a character. I don't want anything to do with it. And that may be unfair, but that's where I stand.
Have you watched the other cartoon that Mike McMahon was working on?
Rick and Morty?
No. Have you watched Rick and Morty?
No. I watched 30 seconds of it, and I'm like, I can't do this.
Yeah. Oh, I love Rick and Morty.
So there's a character on that whose name is Mr. Poopy Butthole.
Oh, Lord.
So that makes Peanut Hamper like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
There is also a character named Bird Person.
Yes. Not Birdman.
Bird Person.
Bird Person.
In bird culture, that is considered a dick move.
Yes. All right. Final thoughts for this episode that has taken us a bit ring around the rosy, but has been fun while we explore the void.
You know, it felt like a love letter to all of Voyager's wackiest adventures, and I absolutely adored it. This episode was like returning to my childhood home and reminiscing. From seeing the bridge, I had moments flooding to my memory from the first time we entered it to the final time we saw it, where Janeway gave her final order to set a course for home. Engineering brought back a flood of emotion for my love of B'Elanna. Then the mess hall, astrometrics, and sickbay, as well as every interior shown, was a flood of memories and nostalgia for the ship and crew who captured my heart and imagination.
Well, that says it.
Yeah. Couldn't put it better than that.
Yeah. No, it was a wonderful episode. Thad, anything you want to add?
I loved it.
All right.
Oh yeah. No, I should. Yeah. I do want to call out, actually, safety protocols set to random. Why does that even exist?
You know, I think back to Extreme Risk and B'Elanna turning off the safety protocols. Yeah. That seems like a total B'Elanna thing to do, being, you know, a half Klingon of let's just roll the dice and hit random.
Also, when the multiple Michael Sullivans show up and are like carting Burnham away, she yells, "Computer, delete this guy," which is another deep cut Voyager reference. Delete this guy. Which would have been would have been another opportunity for a hilarious Voyager deep cut had the computer responded, access to Michael Sullivan subroutines are denied. Right. Janeway. You know, Janeway locked herself out, but it would have been a funny move for just him to be completely locked out.
That would have been good.
But other than that, it was fantastic. I am so happy to have Lower Decks back again. It is still my second favorite Star Trek series of all time after DS9, and I want more Lower Decks. So conveniently, we got another episode this week.
Yes, we did.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll get into that in the next episode, listeners. We did split this in two, as you likely have noticed. So we'll finish up this one by saying thank you to Jeremiah for joining us today. And of course, you're going to join us for the figurative tomorrow as well. Where can listeners find you online, and what work would you like to plug?
You can find me over on Twitter at Captain Jeremiah, as well as my own show, Captains_Couch, which is a Star Trek Voyager podcast here on the BQN. As for what I'm working on right now, I am currently in production for Season 2 of my show. I do not have a date of when I will begin releasing episodes, but please stay with me as they are in production.
Well, Thad, where can people find you when you're not curating a uniform collection for the Fleet Museum?
I am doing that sometimes. Best place to find me is also online on most of the socials. I can be found at Tyrannicus. That's Tyranicus. You can also hear me on the podcast I do with my friend Carl called License to Spiel, where we talk about James Bond and James Bond adjacent things. That's license spelled with a C like the British do it. Chrissie, where can people find you when you are not using stinky cheese to save the day?
That feels like something that would happen on, like, Bake Off or something. Right. Well, in addition to here on Infinite Diversity, you can find me on History with the Szilagys here on the BQN, that twice-weekly short history podcast I do with my fellow historian partner, Jason. I'm also happy to chat about our shows in the BQN Collective on Facebook, and I'm on the website formerly known as Twitter as the Goddess Livia, that's TheGoddessLivia, where I post about Star Trek history and leftist politics, and I'm recently on Blue Sky. Haven't been doing a lot with it yet, but been trying to reorient to the platform that has fewer Nazis. So that's good. So I'm on Blue Sky, same thing, Goddess Livia. Basically anywhere that there's a handle, I'm Goddess Livia. So.
Don't forget all our other great shows on BQN. Here's Amy Nelson to tell you all about them.
What shows are on BQN, you ask? Well, here's a rundown of some podcasts you might be interested in. All Good Things, a Star Trek Universe podcast covering all of Trek, hosted by Amy, Mark, Christos, and Kelvin. Bargain Bin Gamer, a YouTube show hosted by Davey, a self-proclaimed gamer who specializes in reviewing and showcasing affordable video games. If you're lost in the Delta Quadrant, check out The Captain's Couch, a Star Trek Voyager podcast hosted by Jeremiah sitting on Janeway's Ready Room couch. Cinema Z, a film discussion and review podcast showcasing films you probably missed but should definitely check out, hosted by Mark, Matt, and Laz. Beam Aboard the Galaxy Class, a Star Trek Next Generation podcast covering all of TNG, hosted by Amy, Joe, Rhea, and Kevin. History with the Szilagys, a snippet of historical events from around the world, hosted by Chrissie and Jason. For the newest Trek coverage, check out Infinite Diversity, hosted by Chrissie and Thad. Test your Trek knowledge with Trexperts Quiz, a Star Trek quiz show hosted and written by Davey. Union Federation, covering all things Star Trek and the Orville, which we all know is really a Star Trek show, hosted by Kyle, Kevin, Amy, and Haley. Spill the Tea with What's the Tea, Bev? A Trek current events and fan interview show hosted by Christos. And for our Patreon members, we have The Hive Mind, BQN's monthly roundtable discussion with hosts and listeners. It's Green, a cornucopia of topics hosted by Mark, and Amy's Math Moments, a quick look at math moments in Star Trek, hosted by Amy. We know you have a choice of podcasts to choose from, and we thank you for listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
Thank you very much for tuning in to Infinite Diversity. Thank you to Zach Tripp for the wonderful theme music and Mark White for the awesome show art. Please subscribe in your favorite podcast player, and don't forget to rate and review us there as well.
If you want to reach out, you can find the network on Twitter at BQN Podcasts, or our show specifically at ITIC Podcast. You can also talk about any and all of the BQN podcasts in our Facebook group, the BQN Collective. When you next hear from us, we'll be talking about the next episode of Lower Decks, I Have No Bones, Yet I Must Flee. Until then, peace and long life.
I love that title.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had to work, so I was not able to go. Otherwise, if I had been able to take off time off work, I probably would have gone to the event, because they did one in New York and they did one in LA at the same time. But I wasn't able to go. But I have friends who went went on both coasts, and not the same friends that did both coasts, but obviously. And yeah, it looked like...
You know people with private jets?
I do know a friend who lives in DC, who flew to LA to do that picket line because he figured it was going to be a bigger event, and it probably was. But no, I don't know any friends with private jets. That would be amazing. If I did, I would absolutely be like... the next time I had to go to STLV, be like, hey.
That's my dream. If I've ever become independently wealthy, all I'm going to do with my time is just be a Star Trek convention groupie and hop from one convention to another.
Absolutely. I have had this same thought. Like, if I ever win Powerball, which I suppose is not going to happen because I would have to play Powerball, but...
that's a factor. But you could put away that couple dollars each week. It wouldn't be independently wealthy, but it would
rich. But
okay.
But yeah, if I ever was rich, if I didn't have to work, yes, that is what I would do. I would just be going to conventions all the time.
That's the dream.
That would be awesome. Yeah.
Anyway.
Although I am really wanting the new release of the Enterprise D that'll actually saucer separate.
That is cool.
Yeah, I'm super looking forward to that.
So what I'm annoyed about vis-a-vis those Playmates figures, I bought them. I've got Riker right here. As soon as they came out, they released newer versions that aren't actually a different SKU or anything, where they did a better paint job on them. Like there's
and his shirt's not ripped.
Well, yeah, the new ones don't have. That's the best part about this. It doesn't have the stupid ripped shirt of the original one, but like people were saying that they've been finding like in the wild in Target, where they actually like in addition to they actually like painted the faces. Like this one, the it's just peach colored plastic, and then like they painted the eyes but like the newer ones they've actually painted the faces and done like cheeks and whatnot, and they look really good. But that wasn't the ones that they originally released, and they still have the same SKU and the same barcode on them, so you can't just like go online and order those.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway.
I know I have that original. I have that same Riker without the painted face, and when I used him one time for stop motion, and he's almost translucent under the lighting.
Yeah. I mean, it's still a decent figure, but...
Yeah.
The new one looks so much better, but I don't have one because I would have to find it in the wild, basically, or order like 10 of them, and then hopefully one of them is, and then send the others back.
Yeah. I meant to do that, really.
Oh!
That's an easy explanation, though. You could be like, I hit 10 instead of...
I did order the convertible Enterprise backpack from Hero Within yesterday.
Was that Hero Within, or that? No, that was it's a different company.
Oh, was it a different company?
Yeah.
I need to know about this because my 50th anniversary backpack's coming apart.
It's not Hero Within. I'm trying to remember what the name of the company. It's some other. It's like Heroes and Villains, I think is the name of the company.
Heroes and Villains. You're right. Yes. Because I remember now that it didn't automatically have my information when I pulled it up, and I was like, "Well, that's weird. I'll just put it back in."
Yeah, no, it's a different company. I'm tempted by their by one of their pullovers too. They look kind of cool.
Those look comfy. Okay,
Did anybody happen to order the re-release motion picture soundtrack on vinyl?
I have the original, but no, I didn't order the new one.
I ended up I was able to get one of the Enterprise colored editions that was the limited to 300 presses.
Oh, nice.
Which I didn't need because I have 2 copies of the original release sitting over here on the shelf.
Well, I mean...
Yeah, no, I was tempted, and it looks kind of cool. If it was a movie I feel bad. If it was a movie I cared more about, I like motion picture. I like all of the movies. But if it was like Star Trek 4 or Star Trek 3 or Star Trek 6. Actually, I don't think 6 has ever been released on vinyl.
No, it hasn't, because I have all of them. I have all of the original releases, movie soundtracks up to 6. And 6, I've looked and looked and looked.
I don't believe it ever had
never
one.
existed.
Yeah.
No.
And I would buy it the instant they made it.
Yeah. I really want 6. I want Generations, and I want First Contact on vinyl. The fact that Nemesis has been released on vinyl before those just...
To be fair, the score is the best part of Nemesis.
Yes, no, it is.
Yeah.
But it's like a Star Trek movie that has almost as bad reputation as number 5 got a vinyl release before some of the best films in the franchise. Just was kind of like, really?
And I do have that Nemesis release. It's nice.
I've never played mine, but I do have it.
But yeah, no, that convertible backpack, I'm tempted. But I feel like I probably wouldn't use it enough to justify spending $150 on it.
The fact that it was a convertible bag made me want it for STLV, because I'm always needing an extra piece of luggage when I return. And I was like, well, this one is so versatile that I could use it on the floor and use it as a carry-on.
So an STLV hack that I have used before is there's a FedEx office in the Rio. I, one year, mailed home a big box of dirty laundry so that I could take all my merch home.
Yep.
Okay, it's funny that you said that, because before we went remote at my company, my boss would allow me to just take our FedEx account number and ship everything back to my house.
Oh, that was nice of them.
Yes, and the FedEx office at the Rio hated it, because that means they didn't get a fee, because I was using a corporate account number. But one year, I ended up shipping all of my dirty clothes back to my assistant at work. And I had called her, and I'm like, do not open any of my boxes. And she's like, but I love to see what you brought home. I'm like,
you don't want to see this.
You don't want to see this. It's a week's worth of dirty, smelly convention laundry.
Yeah, no, I'm like, I want to take my merch home and have it right away. So yeah, I'm just gonna ship this big box of dirty clothes home because I don't care if that takes a week.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those uniforms are the only time those uniforms are comfortable is when you were just sitting in them.
Yeah.
Not doing anything. Not walking, not breathing, not living. I mean, I have the full Picard version First Contact uniform, the pants, the undershirt, the vest, and the jacket, and a Voyager jumpsuit. Both uniforms made from the exact way that they were made on the show. So heavy gabardine wool, very difficult to keep in place. You know, the undershirt for the Voyager uniform, it likes to ride up under the jumpsuit, and the next thing you know, that it's ridden so far up that the collar is now dripping because there's no tension holding it down.
Didn't they sometimes weren't they sometimes kind of like onesies, the undershirt? Like it had a part that went under
it had a part that went under you, like a onesie.
So to keep that from happening, right?
Right. Mine does not have that. I guess that was the only part that the creator didn't do like that. I didn't even think about that. Yeah. The First Contact uniform, you know, there's a piece of rubber inside the pants that is supposed to hold the undershirt down. But when you're walking STLV all day, you know, I stay at the Gold Coast, it's a 21-minute walk from the 4th floor of the Gold Coast to the convention area of the Rio.
Yes.
By the time you get there, and then you are walking around the con, everything is out of place on that First Contact uniform. The pants are falling, the undershirt's riding up, the shoulders are bunching on the jacket, and not to mention that you are sweating like a targ in heat. There's no comfortability in the uniform.
And God help you if you raise your arms in the First Contact uniform.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. That jacket that's one thing I didn't like about the updated Card Season 3 uniform is that they cropped the tops again and made them so short. I'm like, no, a longer top is better than a short top.
And that's why in the First Contact uniforms, except in instances where the script called for it to be a jacket, everyone except Picard and Sisko wore jumpsuits.
Yep. Yeah, the jumpsuits are nice, but the jumpsuits are also like, doing a tack interpretive dance trying to get into, unless you have
And they definitely ride up in sensitive areas.
Yes. The only good thing I can say about the jumpsuit is the stirrups.
Yeah.
And the pants that keep the lines perfect, except for the undershirt unless you have the onesie version.
Well, you could always put stirrups on the pants to hold them in. And if you put buttons on the inside of the pants, you could then put buttonholes in the shirt.
That's true.
That's a good idea. That is a good idea. Of course, that would take even further manipulation and contortioning to get into.
Yes.
Yeah, but if it serves the same purpose, and
I think it would work if you put the shirt on first, and then put the pants on over it. Then you can attach the buttons pretty
That's
easily.
true. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, next week on uniforms and of Star Trek, and I don't know.
I would absolutely do that podcast. Just saying.
I know you would. I would not be able to co-host that with you because I do not have any. But
all right, Jeremiah, let's start a uniform podcast on BQN.
There we go.
You would have to talk about other clothes. You'd have to be like Trek fashion or something. Be mostly uniforms, but also like
Yeah, we'll have to talk about like Jake Sisko's bus seat and stuff like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the one sweater that each ship has. And Riker's blouse collection.
All blue.
Oh, yeah. Picard's
he likes
shorty
his
robe.
blue blouses. Yep.
Picard's tits out outfit, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah.